Did you know that according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the top 20% of Australians own 63% of Australia's wealth, whilst the bottom 20% own just 1%, which means that the average wealth of those sitting within the top 20% of Australia is 92% higher than those sitting within the bottom 20%. That is a pretty significant wealth gap we have here within Australia between those two demographics. So what can we do to ensure that we aren't left behind and stuck within that bottom 20%? How much you've saved by age can be a really good way to benchmark yourself and measure whether or not you're on track financially. And whilst we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to other people because everyone's circumstances are different, hopefully this video can serve as a benchmark for you and help you set some goals if you are behind financially and are looking to achieve financial independence later on in life. Whether or not you're fresh out of uni, well into your career, or still forging your path through life, never forget that it's never too late to start saving and to check in as to whether or not you're on track financially. Now, starting at the ripe young age of 20. Now, if you're in your 20s, how much should you have saved? For most people in their 20s, saving and investing is not only an afterthought, but something that you don't even really consider. So according to the data, the median amount that a 20-year-old has in their savings is roughly $2,828. Now, I get it. At 20 years old, you probably don't have much savings at all. If anything, you're probably in debt with like $20,000 to $30,000 in HECS debt already. Because the goal here is to create awareness to give you some perspective as to what you should be striving for in the future. In your 20s, even if you have a negative net worth, it's a good time to start laying out the foundations and start building out those good financial habits such as budgeting, starting to save, and avoiding pitfalls that could hurt you later on in life financially, such as avoiding bad debt such as credit cards and personal loans. Now, in your 20s, you're definitely gonna want to start saving money. Now, I get it, you're probably not gonna be earning a lot of money during this period of time, especially in your early 20s, but that's totally fine. But at this point in your life, you're definitely gonna want to save approximately 20% of your after-tax income each and every month. So say for example, you make $1,000 each month after tax, you're gonna wanna save at least $200 of that every month as well. And all of this money that you're saving is gonna be used for two things. The first thing that you're gonna do with this money is to put it towards an emergency fund. And after you finish that step, then you're gonna wanna start investing your money. Now, with an emergency fund at the age of 20, you're probably gonna want around 2 months worth of living expenses saved up. This money will sit in a high yield savings account and should only be used for real emergencies. The main point of an emergency fund is to actually protect your investments. If your car breaks down and you need $500 all of a sudden to actually fix the damn thing, the last thing that we want to do is to actually dip into our investments and pull money out of the market. Now, in terms of investing in your 20s, because you don't have a lot of money to invest and you're probably new to the whole investing world, then I definitely recommend micro investing apps. These are apps on your mobile phone that will essentially allow you to invest in small increments. There are a large variety of options to choose from now within the market, such as Raise, Spaceship, and CommSec Pocket. Any of these options are going to be great because each of them are targeted towards beginner investors such as yourself, and they're going to take you step by step through the whole process from depositing your money to actually investing your money into the stock market. By the time you reach 30, how much money should you have saved? Now, I did a ton of research online to try and find the most accurate number for how much a 30-year-old should have saved, and the general consensus is that by the time you're 30, you should have at least 1 times of your current salary saved up. So for example, if you're making $60,000, which is the median salary for those aged between 21 to 34 years old, then you should have at least $60,000 saved as of 30. And for the record, when I'm talking about $60,000 saved, it could be anything across money that you've invested into the stock market, your superannuation, or money sitting within your transactional account. The money that you're saving and investing will continue to grow and compound over time. And if you're consistent with your savings and investing, then your money will continue to exponentially grow into the future. Now, if you're 30 and you're only just starting to think about saving and investing, then that's totally fine as well. But you are definitely going to want to ramp up how much you are saving each and every month. And I'd target at least 30%. If you don't have an emergency fund yet, that should be your absolute priority. And I'd be taking that full 30% that you save every month until you have at least 3 months worth of living expenses. Then once you've got your emergency fund sorted out, then you can direct that 30% directly into investing into the stock market, preferably in a low-cost, broad market diversified ETF. Vanguard has quite a few options to choose from. Now that you're in your 40s, how much should you have saved up? By the time you're in your 40s, it's recommended that you have at least 3 times your annual income saved up. Now, what salary you're on can vary drastically from each individual depending on, what career you're in. However, the median within Australia at this age is approximately $80,000. This means that you should have at least $240,000 saved. Now, the goal with investing for retirement is to invest enough money so that you can live comfortably for the rest of your life without having to work again. And to just give you some perspective as to how much money $240,000 could grow to, let's just assume that you had $240,000 already invested into the stock market. Assuming that it will continue to grow at 7% adjusted for inflation, which is approximately the average over the past 25 years, then by the time you're 65 years old, you have close to $1.4 million even if you never invested another dime. Now, at the age of 40, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, you're at your highest earning potential. You've had enough time in your chosen profession, and your salary should reflect your experience. On top of this, you probably have a house, mortgage, and kids as well by this time. At this point, depending on your retirement goals, you can also start to consider whether or not you want to salary sacrifice into your superannuation. Because contributions to your superannuation are only ever taxed at 15%, and theoretically speaking, in your 40s, you're going to be at your highest marginal tax rate, it's a no-brainer to make concessional contributions because of the theoretical tax savings. Now, in your 40s, even though you have all of these additional expenses, such as your mortgage, your family, and kids, you should still continue to invest into the stock market. Now, depending on your own personal risk tolerance, some people might prefer to focus paying down their mortgage. However, mortgage interest rates, even with rising interest rates, are currently sitting around about maybe 3 to 5%, and the stock market has historically given back at least 10% unadjusted for inflation. Now that you're in your 50s, you've essentially entered into the third quarter of your life. Despite what society might say, don't worry, you're not old at all. You still have heaps of life left and room to continue saving and investing for your retirement. By the time you're in your 50s, it's recommended to have at least 5 times your annual salary. This means that you should have close to $400,000 saved. Now, by the time you're in your 50s, you should hopefully have most of your large debts paid off, such as your mortgage. And this is because you don't really want to be in your 60s and still worrying about how you're going to make your mortgage payments. This might also be a good time to start assessing your asset allocations and potentially shifting some of your investments to more defensive assets. Don't be that guy who has 100% of their net worth tied to cryptocurrency at the age of 50. By now, you should definitely start and try and max out your concessional contributions to your superannuation. If you haven't been making any contributions at all, then this is actually a good thing because any unused contributions get rolled over for the past 5 years. Now that you're in your 60s and you're approaching for retirement, where exactly should you stand in terms of savings? And it's recommended that you have at least 7 times your annual income in savings, which, assuming that you're still making the average median salary in Australia, means that you should have over $560,000 saved up. Now, once again, I really want to emphasize the point that all of the money that you've saved up, so that $560,000, you've not only saved that up, but you've also invested into the market over the past several decades. And it hasn't just been sitting there in your bank account or hiding underneath your mattress, which means that that $560,000 is theoretically just the principal amount. Now, at the age of 60, hopefully you've paid off your mortgage and you definitely want to be shifting your investments towards more defensive assets. This means changing your superannuation allocation from a high growth or a standard to a more defensive allocation. you don't want to be 100% invested into the stock market at this point in your life, because the last thing that you want to happen is for a recession to happen and for your net worth to fall by 30 or 40% just before you're retiring. Now, I wanted to take the last few minutes of this video to talk about how you can ensure that once you enter retirement, you never actually have to worry about how you're going to pay for any of your expenses moving forward. The last thing that we want to do when we enter retirement is second guessing how much we can spend on any given day. Spending too much too soon can lead to you running out of money and having to go back into the workforce by the time that you're 70 years old, which is definitely something that we'd all like to avoid. And there is a magic formula that I'll share with you that will eliminate that risk. So here it is. Essentially, you're going to want to find out what your average annual expense is. So you're going to want to take all of the things that you pay for on any given month, such as your food, your groceries, your bills, your rent, etc., and add that all up. You need to figure out how much you spend on average, because this will be key to determining that magic formula. Now let's assume that you spend $60,000 on any given year. And what you're going to want to do is multiply that number by 25. And why 25, you might ask? Well, 25 is essentially equivalent to 25 years. And by the time you're 65, 25 will bring you to 90 years old. And that's 10 years past the average life expectancy. And the general rule of thumb is that you do want to take your expenses and multiply by 25, which will determine how much you need to comfortably retire by the time you're 65 years old. So in this example, if you spend $60,000 on any given year, then you'll need $1.5 million in total assets by the time you're 65 to retire comfortably. Once you have that number, then you can plan ahead so that you can determine how much you need to invest to end up at that number by the time that you're 65. Which is why knowing this number earlier can play to your advantage, because then you can invest more money into the stock market and let compound interest do its magic. Now, that's all I've got for you guys in today's video. If you did like the content today, make sure you hit that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe for more content like this if this is something that you want to see more of in the future. All of you have been amazing, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.